This is the Tech Phantom, and welcome to the last episode of this series, where we are making a plus 10 weapon, hopefully within the first hour of Dark Souls. So let's get ready to the action because we are going to do something that is very important right off the bat. If you guys remember back in the first episode in the character selection screen, we chose the Bonfire Ascetic as our starting gift. So, what we are doing is we are going to head over to the Cardinal Tower bonfire and we are going to use that Bonfire Ascetic. And what you want to do is you want to burn that Bonfire Ascetic at this specific bonfire. Now, when you burn Ascetic at a bonfire, it takes that area into NG plus mode. So the enemies will respawn, a lot of the loot will respawn, but new enemies and new loot will also respawn in some specific areas and some specific bonfires. So this is going to allow you to have options to farm or have the ability to get some items in NG plus, some NG plus items during your first walkthrough. And you could see that there was a phantom knight on top of Pate waiting to ambush us. So the enemies are now in NG plus mode, so they're going to hit harder and they're going to have better defenses. So I'm going to go very carefully here. These hollows can be a little bit dangerous in NG plus mode, and my build is still a little bit weak. So I'm just going to be patient. I'm going to use my shield, and I'm going to make sure that I don't die to those hollows. So, now that we've dispatched of those hollow infantrymen, let's go up to this chest. Now this chest, the first time we came through here, had a Titanite shard, but now it has 3 Titanite chunks. So that was the main reason for selecting the Bonfire Ascetic and for burning the Bonfire Ascetic at this location, is that it gives us access to 3 Titanite chunks right away. We've also used the Pharaoh's Lockstone that we picked up down the well, and that is going to lead us to an area that with the 2 chests, and in the second chest that we just opened up, we have found a Titanite slab. So in one fell swoop, we've gotten 3 Titanite chunks and 1 Titanite slab. So we need 3 more Titanite chunks, and we'll be able to take our weapon to a plus 10. Now, the next area that we're going to go into is going to have 2 Titanite chunks, and then you will have an option as far as where to go for the third and last Titanite chunk. One thing I should say about Bonfire Ascetic is that before you burn it, you do have to defeat the boss. So the reason we were able to to burn Bonfire Ascetic at the Cardinal Tower bonfire is that we had already defeated the last giant and the pursuer. So let's go back to Majula and let's go ahead and reinforce our weapon since we do now have Titanite chunks. And 3 Titanite chunks are going to let us take our weapon up to a plus 8. So our broadsword is now doing more damage. And we still have a good amount of souls, so let's go ahead and let's level up. And we're going to continue to work on vigor and on strength, but obviously you guys can level up any way that you want, especially if you're using a different weapon to do this. Obviously you'll want to min max, and you'll want to level up based on your weapon. All right. So in episode number 2, we bought a ring from Shelquar. We threw ourselves down the well, and we eventually found a fragrant branch of yore. So it's time to use that item, and that will let us go into an area where we're going to find the next two Titanite chunks. So let's go past Bernhard of Yugo here, and behind these doors are some goblins. So let's take them out so they don't ambush us. And now we come to a statue. And if you read the description of the fragrant branch of yore, it's going to tell you that it can cure petrification. So obviously that statue, it's actually an NPC. Her name is Rosabeth. She was petrified, and she was basically blocking the way because she was petrified as she was about to open that lever, or pull that lever that will open the doors. So after you pull the lever, there is an ambush anyway. So a bunch of goblins come out, and there's also a basilisk. But the goblins are not really that big of a deal. They have a short aggro range, and as soon as you get up on these stairs here, they'll start backing away. They might follow you if you get too close to their aggro range, but typically they'll go back. So the basilisk is really the only one that you'll have to worry about. Quick tidbit on Rosabeth. She is a pyromancy trainer, and if you give her any item of equipment, you only have to give her. You can give her as much equipment as you want. She will ask you for some, but you only have to give her one piece of equipment. She will go back to Majula, and she can sell you some pyromancies, and she can also upgrade your pyromancy flame. So we went ahead and we got another Estus shard, and we also lit a bonfire, and that's just to be safe. In case we get killed by these goblins, we don't have as long of a walk. And there is a bonfire a little bit further down the road, not too far away. And there's a bunch of goblins surrounding the way, but they're really not that tough. They can poison you with their bear attacks or with their weapons, or they can try to stun you by throwing rocks at you, and then they'll try to surround you. But they're pretty easy to avoid. And now we found the next bonfire. All right, so we need to keep going. We're going to go into the Misty Woods. And you do have to be careful here, guys. It's pretty easy to get lost. And there's a bunch of enemies here. They're called the Roaming Souls. They're basically the guardians of this wood. But if you stay to your left and you essentially you hug the left edge of the hills or of the rocks, you will eventually come up to a set of stairs in an incline that will take you up and over the foggy, misty woods. And we will be in a new area. So there is some loot here, so let's just go ahead and pick up the loot. Iridium life gem. Always appreciate it. And there's a little bit of a hidden bonfire underneath this platform or this incline. And this is the Shaded Ruins bonfire. Okay, so there are two Titanite chunks in this area. What I am going to do, and this is going to take me a little bit longer, so this is completely optional, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to loot the entire area. Now the reason I want to do that is because there are some useful items. There are some souls that I can use to level up. And since I'm going back to Majula to turn in the Estus flask shark, I might as well do it. But first, you guys just saw me pick up a petrified dragon bone and our first titanite chunk. So we are now up to we found 4 chunks, so we need 2 chunks more. So there is 1 more chunk in this area, so we want to look for it. But again, before this is completely optional what I'm doing. I've decided that I'm going to go ahead and loot, do a little bit of looting. And the reason I decided to do a little bit of looting is because we're going to go into a boss fight. And I don't know if my build is strong enough to easily take out the boss. So again, since I have an Estus Flask shard and I'm going to be going to Majula to turn that in, I figure I might as well get some souls so that I can level up a little bit. So I'm just avoiding the Lion Clan warriors. They're very slow, but they have a ton of poise, and they're actually not too difficult to backstab, but they're highly resistant to magic. And really the only thing you have to be careful about here are these curse jars. And you have to mind the curse meter. I'm kind of close to being cursed, and there we go. I got too close to one of the jars, so I got cursed. So that was a little bit, I got a little bit greedy. I was gonna try to loot that chest. I think that chest has some human effigies in it. And it cost me. I ended up getting cursed. So there's only a little bit more looting left to do in this area, guys. There's going to be another soul hidden in these barrels. And now we are coming up to a crystal lizard. And this crystal lizard is very important. You don't want to miss it. It is going to drop the second titanite chunk that you can get in this area. Now, you can use the Great Club if you want. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to hit crystal lizards with the Great Club. Just two-hand it and use the overhand strong attack, the R2 attack. So that's a little bit of a tip if you're having issues with crystal lizards. Use a weapon that has an overhand attack. You can also try to do a jumping attack. That works. The best thing to do though is if you have a strong enough range attack, something like a lightning spear works really well if it's strong enough. You can take the crystal lizards out at range with that. So we've obtained the 2 titanite chunks that are in this area, and because I have the Estus shard and because I did some looting, I'm gonna go ahead and go back to Majula. Now again, this is completely optional. You don't have to do this. As a matter of fact, if I skipped this part, I definitely would be under 1 hour for this. I think as it is, we ended up being at a little bit over 1 hour, like an hour and 5 minutes or something like that, including all of the including all the loading screens. So let's make ourselves human again so we look good. And by the way, I've been getting all kinds of comments on this character. Some people love it, and some people absolutely hate it. So keep that feedback coming, guys, because this is going to be the character that I'm for the most part going to use. I might give her some hair. I think that's what's turning people off. But let me know what you think about this character. All right, so we're going to give the shard to the Emerald Herald, and that's going to give us 4 Estus flasks. And we're going to continue to work on health and strength. And we're also going to up our endurance a little bit. I'd like to have endurance of at minimum of 10. I actually like to have 20 endurance if I can spare it on my build. But at a minimum, you definitely want to have an endurance of 10 in order to be able to block and do a couple of attacks, or at least do a block and an attack and a roll without running out of endurance. So now that we've leveled up and we've turned in the shard, let's go back to the Shaded Woods. Let's go back to the Shaded Ruins. And let's get the way clear to the third Titanite chunk. So at this point, guys, there are two ways to get a Titanite chunk. You can go back to Majula, you can give 2,000 souls to Lycia, and you can go to you can fight the skeleton lords, and keep going past the skeleton lords, and you will eventually come to a poison pit that has a Titanite chunk in it. So that's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do, and it's a little bit faster because I've already opened up the Shaded Ruins, is you can fight the boss of this level, proceed forward into the Doors of Pharos, and you will eventually come up to a Titanite chunk. So it's up to you which way to go. I'm already here at the Shaded Woods, so I'm gonna go ahead and take on the boss of this area. And again, I lost a little bit of time by doing a little bit of looting, but I thought I'd be safe, and I'd just give myself a little bit of endurance and a little bit more health before we take on Scorpioness Nashka. So Nashka is not really that difficult of a boss. She is actually more difficult in NG Plus, when she might be able to one-shot you with her magical attacks. She has two magical attacks, which are her most dangerous ones. She shoots out sort of a shower of soul spears. Those are very easy to dodge. You just move forward or move to the side. Actually, the best thing to do is rush her when she tries to shower you with the soul spears, and you should be able to do a hit. She also has Somming Whole Mass, and that's a little bit more difficult to dodge, but the way I like to do it, guys, is I lock onto her and I go to her side, and then I just run around on her side, and the projectiles will target you and will shoot. But if you're running around her, they should be right behind you and they should miss you. Now, her one attack that is very, very dangerous and will most likely result in your death is her grab. And you saw her a couple of times try to sting you with her stingers, and she will pound down on the ground with her stingers. If you are close to the hitbox to the hitbox of that attack, you will actually be grabbed. You will be stung by her stingers, and you will immediately be made toxic. So, if it might be a good idea to have some poison moss, but she doesn't really give you a lot of time to recover. You know, she makes you toxic. You need to back away and use poison moss as soon as possible, and hope that you have enough health to survive, because you know you've taken some damage from the sting, and she's also going to attack you. Her tail swing also has pretty big range. You saw that I thought I was safe, and she did a tail swing, but that's not too difficult of an attack. And with the buffs that I've used on my weapon, on my +8 weapon, with the lightning buff and with the magic buff, even with the broadsword and with a fairly low build, we're able to take her out pretty quickly. Okay, so Nashka down. Let's go get the final Titanite chunk. Now this is probably the most difficult part of the walkthrough so far, and that is because if you guys are anything like me, you might get a little bit impatient and you might want to rush through. Now we're in the Doors of Pharos, and there are some slow lumbering enemies here, but also the area is filled with water, and that will slow down your movement quite a bit. So you will see why in an instant. But I recommend that you don't rush through this area. Now if you are online, you might get summoned into somebody's world, which would be a pain in the butt. If you are offline like I am, you will be invaded by Bowman Guthrie. So Bowman Guthrie is not really that difficult or that dangerous. The Primal Knights are not that difficult or dangerous either because they're slow and you can circle around them. The enemies that you have to watch out for are the dog rats. They're extremely quick, but more importantly than that, um, their bite has toxins in it, and even through a shield, the toxin will go through, and after 2 or 3 bites, you can be made toxic and you can even be stunned. So, but I don't care. I'm going to try to rush through and make it to the ladder. I have a divine blessing. I have 2 divine blessings, and I'm hoping that I can make it to the ladder. And I almost made it to the ladder, but then they stunned me. They made me toxic, and then they hit me again. So, um, lesson learned. I lost a little bit of time here, and that's because I tried to rush through. So, if you're going through this area and you don't want to die like I just did, go ahead and go through it a little bit more slowly and take out the enemies. So for sure you want to take out the dog rats. So let's try this again. I believe this is the first death of the walkthrough so far. So it's not bad. I think it's gone pretty well. So we're going to prioritize the dog rats. Make sure we take them out. And the Primal Knights, the Primal Knight, we can just ignore. And there's Guthrie. And Guthrie has a tendency to roll away as soon as you're going to try to hit her. And by the way, a little interesting fact about Bowman Guthrie. Bowman Guthrie is a female. Bowman Guthrie is not a male. All right, so there's the 2 dog rats that killed me, so I'm going to take them out this time, which is what I should have done before. Guthrie is still after me. I do have over 20,000 souls in play, so I'm going to make sure that I pick them up. And now I'm going to go up this ladder, and we are going to head towards a chest that has the last Titanite chunk. So the way is going to be guarded by some Gurm. They're very easy to avoid, and they're actually very easy to backstab. And this is the chest that has the chunks in it. It is trapped. One thing that you want to be careful about is you want to make sure that the Gurm don't hit it with their hammer and smash it down. That's happened to me a couple of times. So if you want to be extra careful, you could lure the Gurm away from the chest, and then you can loot the chest to make sure that you don't lose the treasure. Because if you break the chest, any treasure inside becomes rubbish. All right, so I'm invaded by Bowman Guthrie, so I cannot use a homeward bone. I have to take her out. So I'm gonna use this doorway as cover a little bit, and then I'm just gonna take her out. And actually, she's pretty easy because you will be able to stun her with your attacks. She doesn't have a lot of poise. And we have a shield to protect us from her dual Avalons, and do a couple of shots on her, back away, recover our stamina, and then rinse and repeat. So one thing that I could have done here, guys, is I could have, if I would have found one, and I think there is one in the Shaded Woods, is I could have used a ring of life protection, and I could have just killed myself, and I wouldn't have lost my souls. Obviously, the other thing I could do is just kill myself after obtaining the chunks if I didn't care about my souls. But too many souls for me to waste that way, so I had to go through the pain of getting rid of Bowman Guthrie. Alright guys, well, mission accomplished at last. Now we're going to go back to Majula and we're going to complete the reinforcement process, and we're finally going to be able to get our weapon up to a plus 10. So I hope this video has been useful. It's pretty obvious that you guys should be able to do this much faster than me using this as a guide. You should be able to do it in under an hour. I did made some mistakes. I did some optional looting that took extra time. I died once. Obviously you guys don't have to use a broadsword. You can use a different weapon that you want to level up. And I think this is going to be hopefully useful if you want to have a decent build to take on the DLC. And as a matter of fact, if you take a look at how the build is right now, we have a decent shield that blocks 100% damage. We have pretty good armor, and we have a fully leveled up weapon. So this character is nicely outfitted, nicely equipped, and should hopefully allow you to take on the Rotten and to take on the DLC. Alright guys, well that is going to do it for this episode. I'm showing you here my final stats, and ended up with the broadsword that's doing a little bit over 300 damage. So that's going to do it. Until the next time, this is the Tech Phantom signing off.